Hello and welcome to another midday update coming out of the NTN from the studios of the GIS. My name is Jessie Leonce. I will be sitting in as moderator for today's proceedings for this broadcast. This afternoon, we will be speaking on the reopening of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. We've so far heard from education officials from the government of St. Lucia how the preschool, early childhood, as well as primary and secondary schools will operate under COVID-19 circumstances come this new academic year. And in this segment, in this program, we will be hearing from the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College officials on how they will be responding to COVID-19 for their academic year. And of course, particular reference to COVID-19 protocols and online learning. We do have in studio with us Dr. Kathy James Springer. She is the manager for institutional effectiveness and transformation. She's responsible for program development and quality assurance overall. She will be speaking to us on preparations with faculty for online delivery. And we also have in studio Mr. McCorville Combi, Student Experience Coordinator Designate, speaking on the COVID-19 protocols at the institution. And we have online Dr. Keith Nurse, the principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. He will be making a presentation. Unfortunately, he cannot be in studio with us because he is still in Trinidad and Tobago. Special good afternoon to you all three. Afternoon. Dr. Nurse, I will begin with you because I know you have structured a presentation to make for us. But first of all, I just want to ensure that you are in good health from the Twin Island State.
Yes, thank you very much, Jessie, for the kind consideration. Yes, I'm in good health, staying at home most of the time, staying out of the public arena as best as possible. Because you know, the COVID cases have been surging in Trinidad and Tobago. We're not as blessed as St. Lucia in this context. So, yes, I'm fine, thank you.
Absolutely. Looking forward to the time when you can return to St. Lucia and continue your good work at the college. Beginning with the presentation from you, I now hand over to you to commence today's program.
Thank you very much, Jessie. It's a real pleasure to be with NTN. We see the program as a very important mechanism for us to communicate with the wider public on critical matters. And the COVID-19 response is at the uppermost consideration on issues for many of our stakeholders, whether we talk about parents and their students, as well as the ministry, the government, and the wider public. What we wanted to do today, and I'm really gratified to have my colleagues with me as well, is to talk a bit about the COVID-19 response, but also to contextualize it a little bit. As we all know, COVID-19 has been with us for the last several months and is likely to be with us for some time to come. We've all been defining the context as the new normal. And in that regard, since June 16th, in fact, the college made a decision that going forward, we are going to pivot towards online instruction, which would eliminate two things. One, the potential of any kind of disruption if there was to be a surge of cases in St. Lucia, and also to secure that our instruction can be facilitated whatever the case. So in fact, even if we are to be hit by some weather disruption, the programming can still continue. And so this for us is a really important dimension of the shift towards a new modality and a new mode of operation. In many respects, we had been moving in this direction already. What COVID has done is to accelerate that process. And so we think we're in a fairly good position. In fact, relative to some of my colleagues who have been talking with in North America and Europe about what they're doing for their new academic year, I think we are in fairly good stead. So compliments to my colleagues and staff for getting us ready. What I wanted to do, and if you'd permit me to share my screen, I wanted to put where the college is in some kind of context. so that we see the COVID-19 response and some of the transformations taking place at the college within a broader perspective. So please permit me. Hold 1 second. Okay, can you see that? Can you see my screen? I'll just put it on full screen now.
Okay, Roger, we have a visual on the screen. Okay, nice.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'm going to try and do this as quickly as possible. The patience of our audience is something that we don't want to squander. It's a bit of a strategic update, really to give us a sense of where the college is at and where we're progressing to. So the first thing is, let's give some metrics about the college. So for example, our budget is in and around $22 million EC. It's been on that level for quite some time. And 80% of the budget comes from government subvention. The other 20% comes from the fees, principally, that we earn. So we have, as of last academic year, 1,839 students. 64% of them were pursuing their associate degree. As you would well know, the college also offers bachelor's degrees. It offers certificates. It does TVET and a range of other things. But a large bulk of our students are in the associate degree. So that's our mainstay, one can argue. Our academic staff is at 133. It's been around that level for the last 5 years or more. Non-academic staff, similarly, and our staff to student ratio is 16:1. It's pretty favorable. The benchmark is normally around 20:1, and we have about 36 programs on offer currently. So that's the college at a glance. But really to put the community college approach in some kind of perspective, which is that it's largely focused on post-secondary, mostly short-term, semi, and professional terminal programs and courses, as well as academic curricula that results in an associate degree in arts or sciences. And in many instances, it provides the platform for students to matriculate or transfer to a 4-year university, well, a 3-year or 4-year university, for example, a bachelor's degree. And so when you look at how we operate, much of what we now have offered as associate degree programming has already been vetted by many of the universities and colleges with which we have relationships. And our programming allows most of our students, if not all of our students, to move on to a 3-year or 4-year degree in another territory. And so we've been very successful in that regard. So there's no question mark about the quality from that standpoint, because our students have been able to transfer without much of a problem. Just to put the college relative to some of the institutions around the region, so we have 36 program offerings. Compare that with the Barbados Community College, which has 83, Monroe College, 19. I've put in a few other institutions, for example, the Montego Bay Community College, which is around the same level as the St. Louis Community College, as well as the Bahamas Baptist Community College. And then, we put in Miami-Dade College, which you can see they have a substantial programming. So they are a very large institution operating in the United States. One of the issues for us is how have we been doing in terms of attracting students to the college. In the last few years, the number of students who have been applying to the college has been declining. Our peak in 2015 was 1,975 students. And last year, it dropped to 1,268. So, sorry, last year was 1,204. The latest figures that we have for 2020, which is this new academic year, is that we've surpassed 1,300. So even with the COVID context and all the economic challenges, we think that we have possibly turned the corner, that we have stemmed the decline, and that we should be able to have enrollment levels that are superior to what obtained for 2019. But clearly, this is an unsustainable picture, and that's why we have elected to transform some of our programming. This just shows you data for enrollment over a longer period from 2010, 2011, right through to 2019. And you can see that 2019 is our lowest year in the last 10 years, in the last decade. So clearly the college has to shift to a new modality to ensure that we can be competitive and serve the country of St. Lucia and the wider Eastern Caribbean effectively. This decline is also reflected in almost every area that we now operate. The associate degrees, the bachelor's degrees, the diplomas, certificates, and TVET have all been in a downward slide. And so really, it's incumbent on us, those who are particularly at the top management of the college, to turn this scenario around. Now, I know that fees tends to be a really important and contested issue in St. Lucia, but when you compare this Toulouse Community College with some of our comparators in the region and outside of the region, our fees are among the cheapest. I'm not sure that the population understands how competitive, one can argue, our fee structures are. But what that does mean, though, is that if we are to compete and improve the quality of our programming over time, it means that there needs to be increased investment at the college. Whether we're talking about from the governmental level, external to the government. So for example, we are currently under a strategic review by the Caribbean Development Bank, and they are due to provide us resources, one for upgrade of our physical facilities. So several of the buildings are being upgraded, and the contracts have been awarded, and the contractors have begun doing some work. And there's also resources for institutional upgrade, particularly improving the staffing, but also improving some of the technology that we're utilizing on the campus. So those things are in train. But I just wanted to conclude on this note just to say that in relative terms, I think the staff at the college needs to be given some kudos for having been able to sustain the quality over time. What we are doing now, though, is rejigging some of our program. And so Dr. Springer will give you some indications of how we have rejigged some of our programs. And the goal is to make them increasingly relevant to the opportunities identified by the government for transforming the economy and the society. But it's also that we need to be thinking about how we can attract students from outside of St. Lucia. And in that regard, we have to benchmark all of our programs against those that are being offered in the region and outside of the region. And I think we are moving in the right direction. So I want to end on that note and to thank as well Mr. Combi, who recently took up the mantle of student experience, which is what we're calling our new student-centered approach. And his first task was actually to come up with a COVID-19 response strategy, which he's done marvelously. And it's also to ensure that there's a high level of integration among all of our programming and all of the services that we offer to our students and learners, whether it be adult learners or even people who are experiencing our programs online, to ensure that we deliver a quality product and a quality experience. So I want to pass over to my colleagues, and thank you very much for your kind attention. So I'll stop my screen share for now, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
Before you leave, Dr. Nurse, just a quick query. Excuse me. In terms of a press release just received from the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, if you could just speak to the update on fees and the reopening. I understand that there were reports swirling that there perhaps was an increase in fees, and that was going around about on social media posts. Can you just address that matter for the purpose of the viewers right now?
Yeah, I've seen some of this. I've seen some of the social media posts, and there's some level of inaccuracy. So, for example, if you are a continuing student, your fees haven't changed one iota. And when it comes to an incoming student, the fee structures remain essentially the same, particularly for the associate degrees. At the college, we have if I recall correctly, we have 8 different fee structures. So what was being miscommunicated was that the program fees for our professional program was what people were referring to. And the professional programs include things like social work, paralegal studies, criminal justice, for example. And you can well imagine those are for seasoned professionals who are already working in the area. And so there was a bit of a miscommunication in that regard. But for our standard associate degrees, the fees have remained essentially the same. And what we have done, though, is we have introduced something called the Gateways to Global Careers, which has the objective of giving students access to things like internships, as well as an incubator experience, and even a design competition at the end, where prizes will be given to the best students or the best group presentations. What that does is to change the dynamic of the learning experience and allow students to see themselves more as drivers of the entrepreneurial opportunities for St. Lucia and further afield. So I'm sure my colleagues can give further details, but just to say that I can assure the population that there are no significant changes in the fees. What we have done is some of the new programming, which wasn't offered before, has a different price point, but for the established programs, by and large, there are no changes in the fees. So thank you very much, Jesse, for that really critical question.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Nurse, principal of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, pretty much giving us a status update on where the college is at right now, the strides it so far has made, where it's at now, and where it plans to go. And we're hearing of certainly decline in student applications, and definitely work is underway to increase and also attract students from abroad. We are due for our first break in this program. When we come back, we will speak to the officials from South CC who are in studio with us, the person of Dr. Kathy James Springer, Manager of Institutional Effectiveness and Transformation. She will be speaking to us on preparations with the faculty and students for online delivery. We know about online learning, and that whole concept started last term. When at the onset of COVID-19. I will also be speaking to Mr. McCorville Combi, the newly appointed Student Experience Coordinator at the college, to speak to us on the COVID-19 protocols, what you can expect when going onto the compound of the institution. Do stay with us. When we come back, more on the reopening of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College.
She's been watching, waiting, wondering when the sands of time will give way to a tide of change, and for yesterday and today to become a new tomorrow, for a time when her sun can kiss the cheeks of your loved one and her stars can twinkle in her honeymoon skies, when her earthly embrace will reassure and calm your soul, and her unique view can change your whole risen to meet new challenges and to provide safe harbor to all who reach her shores. For her hopes and dreams still stand, shoulder to shoulder, a precious reminder of experiences yet to come. So, wherever your moments and memories take you, let her sense of adventure set you free. She is Saint Lucia. Let her inspire you.
Thank you so much for staying with us. So we are speaking to officials from the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College on the reopening of that institution come this new academic year. And before we went to break, we just concluded a presentation being made by the principal, Dr. Keith Nurse, who is in Trinidad and Tobago at the moment, speaking to us virtually on the status of the college, the expense of the institution, income generation, the student intake, which has notably declined in the last few years, as well as plans for expansion of the institution. And something closer to home and something more topical is the COVID-19 situation. I know we've so far spoken on the early childhood as well as primary and secondary school in terms of the response to COVID-19, how these schools will be reopening for the new academic year. We did hear from officials from the Ministry of Education, and at this juncture I now want to turn to Mr. McCorville Comby, the Student Experience Coordinator, whose first duty, I believe, as mentioned by Dr. Nurse, was to address and to develop COVID-19 protocols for the community college. Again, good afternoon to you, Mr. Comby. If you just outline to us, what are the plans? What will a COVID-conscious Sir Arthur Lewis Community College look like this term?
Okay. Well, the plan, good afternoon, and thank you for having me. The plan, the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College COVID-19 response plan has two elements. And one, the first element is, to the greatest extent possible, minimize the need for students, visitors to have to come to any of the college's campuses or facilities, whether it's at the Mon, whether it's in Vieux Fort or the farm. So to the greatest extent possible. So that's the first goal. And the second goal is, if they do come to the college campuses or facilities, what are the things we can put in place to minimize a COVID-19 infection? So let us take the first one. How do you minimize persons having cause to come to visit the college? Because the students need to be educated, persons need to collect transcripts for sending on to universities for continuing their education. There are other services offered like the college, like the defensive driving. So how do you minimize that? Students or persons coming to the college. We are very familiar with it because when the COVID-19 outbreak came, many of us were able to have to follow that. You offer those services remotely. You move from doing it in a face-to-face modality, and you do it in an online or distant learning modality. And so Dr. Kathy Springer will speak a little more about that. But underneath that first objective, what the college said, and Dr. Nurse said it, from June 16, it took a decision. We would then offer the students the learning modality for students for the academic year. First semester 2020-2021 will be via the online, and we will be using particularly the Moodle platform. Now, there are a number of courses which will not be able to be done primarily online, and these are courses as one of the things that the Sir Arthur Lewis Community, as much as possible, we want the courses not just to be academic, but to have elements of practicums and so forth, which gives students hands-on and real-life learning experiences. So those courses which have those elements in them, So the hard sciences, whether you're doing the chemistry, physics, environmental studies, those courses which have technical or practical components in auto mechanics, you would have to do garage work. Refrigeration, you may have to do work. A number of the culinary arts, you would have to do kitchen work. So a number of those courses have practical components, and so therefore the students would have to come to the campus to do that, and so waivers would be made for those students. So that is the first. So primarily, especially the theory part, will be offered online via the Moodle platform, and then students, when necessary, particularly for the practical courses, will come to the college to do those courses. And so the COVID-19 protocol really applies to now when those students come to the college, what would apply? And it is nothing new, nothing strange and different, because St. Lucia and the rest of the world have been living COVID-19 protocols, and they are core. When you come to the college, we know the norm, wearing of a face mask. Standard operator. You do it when you go to a store, you do it when you go to a building, the wearing of the face mask. The wearing of the face mask for students, whereas in a number of places they said face covering and bandanas are allowed, at the college it will not be allowed. You have to wear a face mask or appropriate face covering, but excluding bandanas. And it's about, the exclusion of bandanas is about a security issue. You want to, and also it's part of a discipline thing, that you come into an educational institution, be appropriate in your. So there's the wearing of, that's one of common. The other one, which is standard everywhere, there is the hand washing with soap or the hand sanitization. So again, entering buildings, there will be, in the bathrooms and so forth, there'll be the automatic ones, but where they're not automatic ones, there will be the bottle hand sprays for everybody on entering those buildings to use those sprays. Social and physical distancing, that is another one. We are very familiar with that. So what we have done, for example, between this week and next week, Wednesday, we are going to arrange the classes with the appropriate physical distancing between the desks. And we've been very serious about that any extra desk will be taken out of the classroom and locked, so that if a classroom, after we have done the physical distancing measurements, can only sit 10 people appropriately, then only 10 desks will be left in that classroom. And that comes from our experience, because for the summer, as I was sharing earlier, when we had arranged the desks, we had packed the excess desks at the back of the classroom, and students would come and take them and rearrange them how they want. So for the physical distances, we really want to be very firm on that, because we know physical distancing and the mask on the face are two of the more very critical strategies in preventing the spread of COVID, and we want to be very clear. And the other one, if you're feeling ill, stay at home. And that goes both for staff and students. So you get up, you call in, you stay at home. And so for the student, they may miss that practical, but because they're doing online, they can always go on and get the follow-up. So these are, as I say, standard protocols which have been used everywhere, and it will be used there. Just some of in the protocols, we also have guidelines as to what the college will do in cases of possible exposure. So for example, in the event that an employee or student has been in close contact with someone that tests positive for COVID-19, it tells what should be done. The employee or student should immediately call the medical hotline 311 or report this via phone to their personal doctor or health professional at the hospital. The employee then should inform their supervisor or the head of department via email or telephone. The supervisor shall, through the department dean or manager, inform the Office of Human Resources. The Office of Human Resources will contact the employee and provide said employee with the necessary guidance. The Office of Human Resources shall inform the employee that the college is mandated to inform the public health officials and a report filed. So for the employee, for the student, those kinds of steps will be then have been outlined, and they will be on the college's website so they know what the college will do. I think it's important for the last point we made there, that we have to inform the persons we are mandated if there is a suspicion to inform the public health authorities so that they can follow up if they feel the need be, and so forth. Because as we should know from all that has been going, contact tracing is critical to be able to find out who was in contact with who, and therefore nip things in the bud. So we have those kind of protocols for what if it happens off campus, what it happens on campus. So if it is on campus, the student or the staff member must immediately be separated from the rest of the students. A call be made to the medical, the emergency services to come and investigate. Triggers for closure and reopening. One, if, for example, there's a confirmation of a COVID-19 infection of anyone, that is a staff, a student, or visitor, who had recently visited the campus that shall be a trigger for closing the campus.
Okay, so at one case?
One case. Because as usual, that one person, for example, that one person may have come to the receptionist's office and spoke to the receptionist. The receptionist said, well, okay, what the information you want, you need to go and get it in the finance department. That person then goes up to the finance department, had interaction with persons in the finance department and left. But during lunch, the persons in the finance department met up with persons in the kitchenette. And in the kitchenette, there was somebody from the division of DTMs, which is down the road, somebody from the library, and somebody from. So all that one person from the finance department met up with 5 people at lunch where they chatted, had fun, talked and laughed. They went from lunch, going back. Those 5 persons each went back to the department, which are different places on the campus. And that person, when they went back to the department, had interaction with. And so the multiplier effect of 1. So out of the abundance of caution, as long as there's a confirmation of an infection, the college will close. And when we close, we would inform the community, that the college community, everybody at the college on that day, that there's a confirmation and therefore you should self-quarantine, you should monitor yourself and stuff like that. The college then will take the step of sanitizing the entire college. And the college then will, before it reopens, would seek the authorization of the relevant public health authority before it reopens. But that will be the guideline for that, because you, as I say, out of the abundance of caution, you don't want to say, well, yes, you only spoke to that. And we saw it with the reason why we're being so particular. We saw it with the false positive which happened in St. Lucia with the call center, that through the person, the entire call center had to go along, but the WASCO had to close down, the support services had to close down for a day because somebody had an interaction with them. Mm-hmm. And so that is why when we become so blasé and casual about that, we forget how one person can be so detrimental to an entire community.
Okay, I think the only question for me on that COVID, I think you've been very foolproof and comprehensive in your appointment as student experience coordinator. Final thing is non-compliance. There would be the usual security on the compounds to ensure that these measures are enforced. Yeah,
we always, the college always had campus security, so the campuses. We have there, we do in the protocols, as I said at the end there. I didn't say it, but it's there. And staff or students in breach of these protocols can be subject to disciplinary action, and visitors to the campus who refuse to abide by these protocols will be refused service. But you really, whenever you share in those ideas, you really appealing to persons, hopefully persons' common sense, persons' concern for community, concern for each other, and you really don't want to have to think it's necessary that you won't have to be reading about breaches and that persons can understand. Because again, we have been very fortunate in St. Lucia, very fortunate that the numbers are low, but the reality is there is no vaccine, and for survival's sake, the economy will continue to open. as the economy continues to open, the chances of possible infections coming in from outside increases, and therefore it becomes even more important for us to remain vigilant about this. And so we hope we don't have to have those instances where we have to insist. But if a person, as I said, a visitor does not adhere, he or she will not be granted any service. To be fair, although we do have not classes, we have had summer classes. The students have adhered to it, especially when they're in their classrooms. Those persons who have come to do transactions, whether to collect transcripts, defensive driving certificates. So far, I find they've been very cooperative, and we have every hope and expectation that the majority of persons will be cooperative as we move forward.
Okay. I now move on to Dr. Springer. Good afternoon to you, Manager, Institutional Effectiveness and Transformation at the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. We did hear from you, Mr. Combi, about the need to minimize student visitor presence on the campus, Mont Fortune, Vieux Fort, and the farm facility. At this point, Dr. Springer, if you could speak to us about the services that are being offered remotely, the Moodle platform, and the overall preparations for faculty and students for online delivery.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for having us here today. We began our response last semester, as with anything else, in that sort of an emergency mode. And what we would like is that we get out of the emergency mode and go into a mode where we are looking really a lot about quality and the experiences that the students have for the coming semester. And so, as Mr. Combe indicated, our push really is to have the students do a lot of online work, and in instances when they come in, they have that blended experience. We have begun, our plan really is that in order to do that, we understand from a lot of the research that we did last semester that our faculty have challenges with regard to setting up and doing everything that they need to do online. And we essentially have taken that approach where we're not going to leave any faculty member behind. Everybody's on board, and everybody needs to move in that direction. And so what we have done is set up a month training. We've actually pushed back the date of reopening teaching so that we can spend enough time with faculty actually helping them develop their courses and set up their courses online. In fact, I left our training session this morning to be here. Our plenary session was actually this morning, where we are introducing faculty to the Moodle Learning Management System so that they become familiar with what it is that we were doing. In the past semester, people were using various platforms, and understandably so, because we didn't want people to be uncomfortable. So we allowed them to use the platforms that they were comfortable with, but the college has now made a decision that we are using exclusively that Moodle platform, and so it requires that people become informed about what it is that they will do. So we began this morning with an introduction to that, an introduction to why it is that we are conducting this training, the purpose, and I think this is always important because sometimes people don't understand why it is that they are engaging in this and what the purpose is of doing it. So we did look at that this morning. We are looking at 3 more weeks of training where faculty come face-to-face in some instances and do some online work. As the basic aim is that at the end of these 3 weeks, the courses will be set up and we will be ready to move forward on the 21st of September in terms of teaching. This is extremely important because as we know, SAFA delivers a very good product in terms of teaching and learning that the students have. And we do not want, because we have moved online, that this will be affected. And so we are looking on 2 fronts when we are looking at this training. We are looking at people understanding the technology, but we also are looking at people understanding the methodology that goes with it, because it's all well and good for us to be talking about this technology and how we are going to use technology and leverage technology. But realizing that the technology does not go without the human element that comes with it. And this is very important. And so the focus of our training is on both fronts. So we're looking at technology, but how teachers are utilizing this technology to engage students, to keep students informed, to keep them engaged throughout this semester. And this is extremely, extremely important, because in the past semester, some of the students, essentially, they had really a lot of difficulty with that online environment. And if you speak to them, some of them will tell you so. And part of it is because they didn't feel that level of engagement that they normally feel in that face-to-face environment. So we don't want that. And so this is the approach that we are using. We are also looking at some training for the students as well, because best practice indicates that you need to have some sort of orientation for not only faculty, but also for students in terms of going online. Because whether we like it or not, it's not our comfort zone. Our comfort zone is that traditional classroom space where we see the teacher and we could ask the teacher can see our body language and get a sense of what it is. When you're in the online world, the student may be on, so they on a live session, but they may not be on. They may be doing all sorts of things. And even you as an adult, sometimes you're in a meeting, and because there's all sorts of things going on in the background, you get distracted. So it is important for students to understand what their place is in that particular online environment, and what is their responsibility. Because the thing that goes with online learning is online learning now becomes a student-centered approach, a learner-centered approach. And the learners need to understand that they have responsibilities as well, and the responsibility doesn't only fall on their faculty to try to get them to, but there's a lot of responsibility that falls on the student. So we are looking at a sort of a 2-week training for our students, so that these students get up. So not only faculty are ready, but students are ready as well to go into that online environment and work. And I think part of the student experience as well is we sort of have to remove the perceptions they have of online at this point in time, because the perceptions would have come from the remote teaching they would have had in the last semester. And that is something we would like. We'd like a positive attitude as they go in, and to see it as part of their education. Because even if today we go back to the face-to-face environment, online still becomes something that they have to deal with no matter what. If they go to other tertiary institutions, they will still have to deal with technology in the classroom and that environment. So the attitude is very, very important. So we are looking at that sort of orientation for the students, so that when we come, everybody is with one objective at the end of this particular semester as we go forward.
Okay, let's just stick a pin in that point. We're paused on Dr. Kathy James Springer, Manager of Institutional Effectiveness and Transformation. We're talking about the reopening of the Sir Arthur Lewis Community College, the COVID-19 response at the institution, the minimizing the need of students and visitors to come to the campus. And we're at the point with Dr. James Springer where we're talking about offering services remotely, the Moodle platform, engaging students and faculty for online delivery. Do stay with us. We have more after this break.
We are at war with the virus, ready to harm us. Panic is not the answer. We can win this together.
Often use hand sanitizer. Better yet, use soap and water.
We must protect each other if we are to beat this corona.
Together let us win this war. Be a soldier for St. Lucia. Together let us win this war. Be a soldier, together we can beat this corona.
So you don't become the next case. Avoid touching your face. I'm sure you've been told so. Handshakes and hugging are up. No, no.
Advice give you the please. Cover your mouth and your nose if you cough or sneeze.
Practice social distancing and avoid large social gatherings.
Together let us win this war. Be a soldier for St. Lucia. Together let us win this war. St. Lucia, be a soldier. Together we can beat this corona.
For further information, please contact the hotline at 311 or the Bureau of Health Education at 468-5349.
Thank you for staying with us. We're now whittled down to our final segment of the Midday Update live on NTN. We're talking the reopening of this Arthur Lewis Community College. The aim is to minimize the need for students and visitors to come to the campus, whether it be Montfort, Tunin, Castries, Viewfort, and the farm facility. The hope is that services will be offered to students remotely, primarily, and also practicals, which are unavoidable. There will be waivers offered to students to come to school, come to the compound, the campus, when needs be. With regard to the services being offered remotely, we're speaking to Dr. Kathy James Springer, Manager of Institutional Effectiveness and Transformation at the college, and she's so far been speaking to us about preparations for online delivery, preparing the faculty and students for online delivery. You were saying, Dr. Springer?
Okay, we were talking about the importance of students having some sort of positive attitude towards online teaching and online delivery, and in terms of expectation. And as I indicated, the expectation that the students would have come out of the experience they've had for the past semester. And this is something that we want to look in terms of dispelling. The approach for the students is a little bit of self-paced, and if at all possible, because we are already looking at how the logistics with regard to that, because we are looking at almost 2,000 students trying to get them in and out and trained. So one of the approaches is an almost self-paced sort of setup that they would have to go through, and at the end prove that they would have done it. We are looking into seeing whether we can do some live sessions, but again, that one becomes a logistical issue in terms of how much we can accommodate in a live session, and because it's a college sort of training, we would like to keep it internal and not necessarily open, because I know in the last semester we did quite a bit of training that was open in terms of Moodle and Zoom. Anybody could join. So for the students, we would prefer not to have that sort of open environment and allow the students the time to ask any questions and not feel intimidated in the environment. In terms of moving forward, I think Dr. Nurse said it when he was speaking. We are not looking at this as a COVID plan per se in terms of going online. I will agree with Dr. Nurse in terms of when you look at what is going on in the world. Any reading that you do on schools and going online, you will see that some schools in the US especially, they opened up and then they had to close again. We would like not to really be helter-skelter with that scenario. So it is almost keeping us thinking about, okay, yes, we're going to go online. It's an opportunity, I think, for us to develop our online resources, but also keep thinking that in the long term, we're going to go online, but maybe we may have face-to-face, depending on what it is, depending on how the environment improves. So it's not something that we're thinking of for COVID only, but it is something to keep for our school and for the future of Sir Arthur Lewis Community College. As I said, in the world today, it seems like we just don't know when it comes to that education and how we are going to approach it. And so that is why the decision came. We made the decision from the onset to try to help to smooth things out. In terms of that, I think SAFA is ahead of the curve. We quite ahead in terms of what we do. We did some of the training that we did, and the decision that we made was ahead so that we knew what we were going to do, and we wouldn't be confused as it comes up in terms of September. So we're going to keep steady in terms of that sort of online, working with faculty and trying to deliver online quality. And as Dr. Nurse said, it's part of the plan to sort of expand our reach. And so the online environment becomes one of the things that we could do in terms of expanding our programming and expanding where we are going to go with Sir Arthur. And before I go, I noticed you talked about Moodle quite a bit. And again, we for us, choosing Moodle was a quality assurance decision as well.
Okay.
In the sense that when we did the evaluation of what happened last semester, we found that the students were becoming a little bit confused as to going to different platforms and looking at varying versions of what it is that they are being taught. And so it is, for us, a quality assurance. We don't want our students to be confused. We don't even want our faculty to be confused. We just want people to feel comfortable in the environment. And even for my office, assessing the programming, because that's part of good quality assurance, doing an evaluation of the programming. When we went in to try to get the information, it's a little bit challenging because things were all over the place. So that is one of the other reasons that we chose Moodle as a platform, or a single learning management system, so that it makes it easy for us to evaluate what is going on, so that we know if somebody's having problems, faculty-wise, students-wise, we can make those necessary adjustments, because it's easier to just go into one system and actually get the information that we need from that. I think it provides, and I keep saying that, an opportunity, because even in the learning management system, you are able to track students. Yeah. You are able to look at students maybe who would have dropped out. Even in a face-to-face scenario, it's not possible to do that sometimes. The student might be right in front of you and you will not know sometimes if they're attending classes, depending on the size of the class and that sort of a thing. So the online environment gives you enough analytics that you could actually go in, you could use it as a formative way of evaluating the students and determine whether a student is failing, whether the student has been dropping out. So you could ask the student exactly what it is the problem. Do you have accessibility, problems with access? Is it that there's so much going on at your home, you might not be able to get a space that you would be able to be feeling comfortable and doing what it is that you need to do. So there are a lot of things in terms of determining that we are going with one accord to using that learning management system, because it's advantageous to us at the end of the day.
Absolutely. And when will training begin for the students?
We're looking at the 8th of September, so that the student training begins, and that runs for 2 weeks, and that should take them into the teaching period.
Okay. And also resource material. Earlier we were speaking about the Hunter J. Faswa Library. I know there have been ongoing issues with the physical structure of the building itself. Speak to us about how resource material will be incorporated into the online platform.
Okay. One of I think is, again, an advantage with the online environment. A lot of libraries have been moving a lot of resources online. I mean, even in your regular day reading, you get a lot of e-books, you get a lot of e-material. And so the need, as much as we need a physical space that students can interact, I think the role of libraries has been changing with that introduction of technology. So for us, it's important, and for as a university, as a community college, it's always important that students have access to library services. So what we are looking at is actually embedding some of the library links into the courses that the students are going to engage in, so that the links are available to them. They don't have to go into the physical library space to do anything. I mean, I remember in my case going to university and never really having to go and check out a book in a library. You have that access online. Once you have your ID, everything, you could get in there and get the information that you need. You could download materials, as long as you're going through that institution. And that is what we are looking at for library services for the students. We have, actually, the students should be able to download any articles, in some cases ebooks that they need, without any measure of going into the physical space whatsoever.
Okay, wonderful. Our time is winding down. I offer final words to you, Mr. Combi.
Well, I just think what it has become cliche for people to say that, you know, COVID-19 is offers opportunity, but it truly offers opportunities, and the only way we can see the opportunities is with the attitude which we approach COVID-19. It's vexing, it's frustrating, but the long and short of it is that it is here, and if our attitude, it is here, I am going to do what is necessary to deal with it, to get around it, then you stop using your energy, our limited energy, on the negatives, and we now focusing that energy on what am I going to do. So what am I going to do? Because of COVID-19, it is going to be offered, classes will be offered primarily online. Okay, how do I prepare myself to? So instead of complaining about, I focus on that, then the energy which I have is focused, and then we will start seeing the opportunities. The digital world, we knew it was there. COVID-19 just pushed it, fast-forwarded into the lives of St. Lucia. So we look at even the government of St. Lucia with their DigiGov portal and stuff. So more and more things, many banks and financial institutions, credit unions, because of the social physical distancing, they had to put things online. So that's the reality. And so it can be frustrating, I acknowledge that, it can be, but take a breath and just use the energy into how do I now start dealing with this digital world, which is front and center of me and is enclosing my life. And I think then we would be able to be dealing with the things which are, because even with the plan, everything will not work smooth. We can tell you that. But as soon as something comes up, what we can assure our students and the college community that we will work to address it if it's the problem, whatever problem arises.
Okay. Final words, Dr. Springer?
Okay, I am really excited, especially from the faculty perspective as to the training that we are going to undergo. We initially thought about online learning and we tried to figure out how we would approach it, and COVID has kind of pushed it in the forefront, and the activities that we have planned have come forward. And I think, as I said when we had the session with faculty this morning, everybody's energized, everybody is ready to get moving and get started. I must emphasize that the start date of opening for the college was based on that premise. We want students, we want faculty to be prepared when we begin. And so it would have been okay if we sort of rushed it. No, well, it wouldn't have been okay. If we rushed it, then it would affect the quality of what it is that is being delivered to our students. So it is very important that we push it back to facilitate that sort of orientation for staff and for students. And when the semester begins, it's an exciting prospect for us to begin the semester in that online environment and see how it rolls out. It's a new paradigm for the college, really.
Wonderful. Thank you both very much for your time today to just elucidate the public on how this Arthur Lewis Community College will be reopening under these COVID-19 circumstances we've been confronted with. I would like to thank Dr. Keith Nurse, principal of this Arthur Lewis Community College, for aligning his schedule all the way from COVID hotbed of Trinidad and Tobago. And hopefully we do wish him all the best, continuing to stay healthy in the Twin Islands state. We do hope that you return to St. Lucia safe and sound. Again, Dr. Kathy James Springer, Manager, Institutional Effectiveness and Transformation, speaking to us on preparations for faculty and students for the online delivery of services at the institution. And Mr. McCorville Combi, last but certainly not least, the newly appointed Student Experience Coordinator at the institution, speaking to us about the COVID-19 protocols. The institution's disciple for COVID-19 at this time. We do appreciate, and I do hear from both of you, the fervor and the feeling behind, strong feeling and passion behind ensuring that this rolls out as seamlessly as possible. Again, to the general public, we're looking to minimize the need for students and visitors to come to the campus of this Arthur Lewis Community College, whether it be the Mon campus, View Fort, the farm facility. Services to students and faculty are being prepared remotely, the Moodle platform. We have training that is ongoing for faculty at this moment, and training for the students will happen, I believe, next week or week after. That's the 8th of September. And of course, we take into consideration that there are some subject areas that that have practicals involved, and that's unavoidable. So students will receive waivers to come to the campus to do their practicals. The COVID-19 basics, wearing of the face mask or appropriate face covering, excluding bandanas, hand washing with soap, hand sanitizers in the bathrooms, and also hand sanitizing bottles you can also make use of. Social and physical distancing measures will obtain, and also if you are ill, please remain at home. We've run out of time. We'd like to thank you so much for watching. We do encourage you to tell a friend who is going to this Arthur Lewis Community College to take a look at this live if they hadn't had the opportunity. My name is Jessie Leon, signing off for now. Thank you, and stay tuned for more NTN programming. Goodbye.